Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Frame. My name is Paul Loya. I'm the Deputy Director of Exhibitions and Collections here at the Long Beach Museum of Art. And today we're sitting here with San Pedro-based artist Barbara Strasen. We're sitting amongst her show All Together Now, which features 9 works that she created from 1967 to 1968, and were shown 69. Oh, okay, 69 into a group show at the Lexi Gallery in San Francisco, and the show was in 68 or 69.
There were a couple of shows,
Right.
but they span between 68 and then 69,
Okay. Yeah.
according to the book.
According to the book, yeah. What the book is amazing. There's a book that references these works. It's called The Lexi. We have it. Ooh.
Oh, the book weighs 150 pounds.
It is a heavy book. So, anyways, this is the book, The Lexi, A Gallery and Beyond by Laura Whitcomb. So you can get this at Printed Matter. It's a wonderful book. I've had the opportunity to kind of dive deeper into this, and tells a wonderful history about the Lexi Gallery and its origins and kind of its place amongst that time period, and with Ferris Gallery, the Lexi, and Green Gallery as well. So, yeah. But,
Oh, right.
yeah. Ferris Gallery with Walter Hopps. Jim Newman, who founded the gallery in 1958, was a good friend of Walter Hopps, who was one of the co-founders of Ferris Gallery here in Los Angeles, and then became the director at the Pasadena Art Museum, which then became the Norton Simon Museum, which the Long Beach Museum of Art had a tight association with, worked with the Pasadena Art Museum, working on design shows in the 50s and 60s. So, yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know any of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, there we go. So, well, welcome, Barbara.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Good. Did you have a nice commute from San Pedro over here?
Yes, I love going over those 2 bridges.
Right?
Talk about rectangular glamour.
Yeah.
With all those cranes and container ship,
Yeah.
container boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah. There's like a large and rich art community there, and I know I've done handfuls of visits with artists there, and a lot of them reference the port. That always becomes, I think, a point of interest for artists. Coming in San Pedro and noticing the port and kind of talking about that within their
And getting
work.
an aerial view.
Yeah.
It's quite
It's wonderful.
glamorous
It is.
in a sort of industrial. Yeah,
Yeah. And the port's huge. I mean, it's massive. So
it's 2 ports.
is it?
Yeah, LA and Long Beach are contiguous.
No, I didn't know that.
So yeah, you just sail over both of them.
I thought it was all LA port, and then it was 2.
Long
It just
Beach,
hit into. Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah, I remember when the naval yard was in there too, the naval base.
That I don't know.
That
Haven't
was-
lived there that long.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What year did you move to San Pedro?
1985.
Oh, okay. What drew you to San Pedro?
Well, we were living in San Diego,
Mm.
and for reasons of work,
Mm-hmm.
we had to move to LA. And
Okay.
we were sort of depressed about it, thinking, we can't afford any part of LA.
Yeah.
So we were driving north on the 405 and thought, well, what if we make a left turn at the 10 freeway?
Mm-hmm.
So we came to the end, and then we cruised around, and we thought, well, this is pretty interesting. There's a little downtown
Yeah.
and some very visually interesting neighborhoods. And you could hear people speaking lots of different languages, and there were hills,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the ocean right there.
Yeah.
And it was hyper affordable,
Wow.
very affordable.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
Very cool. And then, was there? I know there. Yeah, like I was speaking to, there was a large art community there. Was that there? Was that present when you moved there in
Not
'85?
to the best of my knowledge.
No. Was Angel's Gate there? Which Angel's Gate
Angels Gate was
there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That view from that space is.
But I didn't know of any other artists there.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I know now Fran Siegel is over there, Mary
Right.
Thibault,
But
Elise.
I don't think they were there
Right.
then. But in any case, I didn't know about them.
Yeah, because you have you have a house there, and then your studio's on Pacific.
Pacific, yes.
Okay, cool.
And it was a washing machine repair shop. And it said on the top, "Speed Queen washers and dryers."
Is that sign still there?
No. A backlit sign. So shortly after we moved, I had a little Toyota truck, and I had a show in downtown LA.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with a curator friend in a cafe
Mm-hmm.
across the street from my truck, and all of a sudden, the truck wasn't there. So it was established that the truck was stolen. So I decided, ever since then, I would put writing on my car that would say, Speed Queen, to honor the sign on top of the studio. And then it would, I put stick-on letters saying, art disposal system. Because I wanted it to sound official, but not be such that somebody would think that there's any contents of value in the vehicle.
Right.
And the art disposal system came from my wonderful friend and colleague Bob Matheny when we taught together in San Diego at Southwestern College. And he was a Dada enthusiast.
Yeah.
And at some point he printed up a whole lot of stickers and he stuck them on trash cans saying art disposal system. So I just kind of did a mashup of all those things.
Yeah.
And my car was never stolen again, especially owing to the fact of putting black and yellow caution tape on my car, too. So, it's something I recommend to one and all. If you don't want any car theft, do that.
Yeah. We should have sold like Speed Queen decals that you could have stuck on your car in the gift shop as like merchandise.
I could just give away some caution tape.
Oh, yeah, do that too. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So, that's a shame. I wish that sign was still there above your studio.
Oh, and then once I was with, I had to take some work up to Northern California.
Yeah.
And I was parked next to a friend's house where I was staying, and it said art disposal system.
Yeah.
And apparently there was a poet who lived right in back of the house, in the house next to where I was parked. And she put a note on the dashboard saying, what could an art disposal system be? And she had about 15 different guesses, verbal guesses about what it was. And I thought, oh, this is the best.
Oh my gosh. So what were you doing in San Diego prior to that?
Well, I was actually teaching at Southwestern College, and then I was teaching at UC San Diego.
Oh, wow.
And Steve was working for different computer companies, and so we were living in different parts, well, mostly in Pacific Beach. In San Diego.
Nice, yeah.
And we liked it fine.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very good. But you were born in, so you grew up in New York, though, to kind of preface everything. You were born in New York. What part of New York did you grow up in?
Where was I born?
Yeah, where were you born in New York?
I was born in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I love New York.
Yeah.
And when we moved to California, walking down the street in a city, whatever city it was, I was always the fastest walker, But then people caught up.
Yeah.
which really was very telling.
Yeah. And how long were you in New York for, in Brooklyn?
Well, when I was middle school, early high school, we moved to Long Island.
Okay.
And I was a very impatient kid, so I wanted to finish as early as possible. And then I went to college in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And once I moved away, I was happy ever after. I was so happy to be there.
Yeah.
Carnegie Mellon University.
I was going to ask you, what made you choose that school specifically?
I can't remember, but I know that it was an E-Day fix. It was in my head that was the one.
Okay.
And I don't even think I applied to any other.
Really? I know you in literature I read about you. You said that that Richard Wilson and Robert Lepper, who were Andy Warhol's professors.
They were fantastic.
And did that have any kind of? They were Andy Warhol's professors. Did that have any type of impact on you?
After the fact, yes.
Yeah.
Because these were two of my favorite professors at Carnegie Mellon, and one taught design.
Okay.
And he was a brilliant teacher. I mean, I think he was a little bit alcoholic by the time I had him. He was much older.
Yeah.
And Lepper, unfortunate last name, but he was a teacher of semiotics, but they didn't call it semiotics then. They called it the study of signs and symbols.
Oh, okay.
And boy, was that interesting. That was the best. Those were the best instructors. And then Wilson would give design teacher would give various assignments, which were very interesting. Like, take medieval European manuscripts and use contemporary subject matter. And so you'd have to study this mode and study the context for it 500, 600 years ago, and then figure out how to make it contemporary. And I thought, boy, that's a real light bulb moment for me. And then many years later, I had a show in New York, and it was organized by Tom Sokolovsky, who was in charge of the Gray Gallery, and he was amazing.
The Green Gallery? Gray Gallery?
Gray Gallery, as part of NYU.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got to know Sokolovsky, and then after my show, he was doing a show of Warhol called Success is a Job in New York. And Warhol was making these drawings, thick and thin line, and he would block the line and kind of mush it up. And he was mostly drawing shoes because that was his gig at the time.
Yeah.
And I recognized that thick and thin line from one of Lepper's.
Oh, really?
Not Lepper's, but Wilson's class.
Yeah.
And then there were a few other insights that I could give to Sokolovsky about Warhol that weren't known.
Yeah.
That you could only know if you were in the classes of his instructor predecessors.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very, very
Yeah. And what did you study there as your undergrad?
Painting.
Okay.
And drawing.
Okay.
Yeah, painting and drawing. And you could take year-long courses in comparative philosophies.
I was going to ask you if you took any other things.
Yeah, lots.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful curriculum.
Yeah. And like a class like that with the medieval, I know that you'd spoken to about like that Baroque, interest in Baroque painting. Did that have an influence? Like, was that like your interest in Baroque? Did it begin during that time, or did it and then translate?
No, I think I hated Baroque at that
Did
time. You? But every time I say I hate something,
right.
it comes right around to whack me in the back of my head, and all of a sudden I love it.
Yeah.
So I try not to say never.
Right.
But Baroque, what happened? I think I started to like Baroque when I started to get really involved in layering of images and weaving of images. And I love Baroque music, absolutely, from my early teens.
Yeah.
Because I played piano a lot, and that was my favorite music to play.
Do you still play piano today?
No.
No? Okay.
But I love Baroque music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying the words Baroque music give me palpitations. So exciting. And I loved taking a motif and then weaving it.
Yeah.
At front and back, side to side, turning it upside down. And I thought, oh, you can do that.
Yeah.
And it was just so astonishing. So that got me interested in Baroque painting.
Yeah.
And Baroque painting is always very theatrical. Well, not always, but mostly theatrical.
Yeah.
And kind of goofy. And I remember my husband's parents were living in Sarasota, Florida, and we would go to the Ringling Museum, which is the strangest assortment of things like the Tom Thumb collection and the Ringling Circus archive.
Wow, cool.
And then there were in one room there were 4 enormous Rubens, 20 feet by 30 feet.
Oh, wow.
And they were each one was some official event, the welcoming of the emperor, welcoming of the president, the mayor of so-and-so into the city of Bruges or something like that. And there would be cherubs and sea animals coming out of the sea, and up in the corner, this was my favorite part, were these putti, these little cherubs, peeking over the top and rolling down the set. So you see them in the corners, they're like doing this rolling down, like striking the set.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is the best. And it just made me laugh until this very day, and I'm still laughing. And so that, that had a big influence.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and you can kind of see the theatrics in these works here, in these 9 paintings.
Plus, when you like to combine unlike images, which is mother's milk to moi.
Yeah.
The you can combine things,
Yeah.
and ask the viewer to find connections,
Yeah.
the happier I am. And Baroque is a wonderful vehicle for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these paintings are amazing. And but when did you start layering? Before we get into this specific body of work, but you went to the Yale after Carnegie Mellon. Then you went to the fellowship for the Yale Arts Summers program.
Yale Summer School of Music and Art.
Okay.
And
And how long was that course? Was it just a summer?
That was a summer.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was great.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember all the students. There would be this was the painting floor, and underneath was the music floor.
Okay.
So they were playing music ensembles, classical music ensembles of maybe 4 or 5 instruments.
Yeah.
And you would hear the music coming up through the floor, and there would all of us be working. Oh, it was thrilling. It was so great. And I remember meeting Ron Davis, who was much older, and he's got to work in here.
Yeah.
And I remember his telling me or telling us about San Francisco and how it's the last frontier of adventureness. And I thought, I got to do this.
Is that what made you go out? I mean, that's my next question was like, what brought you out west?
Well, that was a big. I mean, I did have the idea to go west.
Yeah.
And then So then we moved west, and my husband was studying math.
Mm-hmm.
He was getting his doctorate at UC Berkeley, and I was getting my MFA.
Yeah.
So we lived in Berkeley, and it was a very interesting time in Berkeley. I mean, I have a gazillion stories. I probably can't tell them on.
Sure. I mean, this is Instagram. Anything goes.
Well, I remember one. So we would, we might go to Yosemite for the weekend.
Wow. Cool.
Then come back, and all of a sudden we couldn't get back into the city of Berkeley because it was all cordoned off because there were political protests and demonstrations.
Mm-hmm.
And then another time we were away. Oh, no. Another time I was, after getting my graduate degree, I was bicycling across the city. I rented a little studio on top of a garage, and I was bicycling across the city, and I wasn't feeling so great. I was thinking, what is this? What's going on? And then I saw that there were things going on, and sort of smoke. And then I realized it was tear gas.
Oh my God.
And I was sort of gassed, and I realized, this is not good. So I got off my bike and walked.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were demonstrations and tear gas, and
wow.
Lots going on.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that time period. I wish I could have been there. It seems like an exciting time to be there, and you were there in the thick of it all. And I mean, so.
And here's another great story.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, who was very adventuresome, said one day, "You want to go with me to this club in Berkeley? It's every Tuesday night."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "All right." And what it was is there were these 3 dancers in this. I think the club was called New Orleans House. And there were these 3 very intense dancers.
Yeah.
They were improvisational, and they were dressed sort of like tap dancers, but they were very, their interactions were very intense.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the dance that they would do, they would invite the whole audience to jump in and start interacting, which was really fun. And completely weird, we never knew what was going to happen. And after doing this once a week for about 6 months, I learned that almost everyone in the audience, as well as the dancers, were involved with some sort of psychiatric institute, or sort of a therapy.
Yeah.
So it was full of surprises.
Yeah, you never knew what you're gonna get. Did you go back?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Was it a weekly thing that you went?
Well, I think, I can't remember why I stopped.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop me from going.
Yeah.
It was just a backstory I did notice that some of the people were distinctly cuckoo.
Yeah. Try to commit you too. They're like, come on.
Which they must have thought I was too.
Right.
Who's to know, right?
Oh my god. So while you're at Berkeley, was the work that you were creating, was it similar to this work? Was it kind of?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, it was. And well, this work was very early.
Yeah.
And the way that this work, what I do remember is graduate students, we would take turns drawing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we would use big rolls of paper, big butcher paper rolls.
Yeah.
So I would make big drawings when it was my turn to draw and not model.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd color them with oil pastel.
Okay.
And then use solvent to mush the oil pastel so it became liquid.
Yeah.
And then I would cut them out.
Mm.
And then I would figure out how to combine them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kind of started this idea of multiple interacting figures. And also I wanted to break the rectangle any way I could.
Wow.
And I did love the New York Natural History Museum.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a pilgrimage site for me.
Yeah.
And I love it. So I wanted to make a curved surface, either concave that way or concave this way.
Right.
So that's what accounts for the shapes on almost all these.
Yeah.
these
Because before seeing, and I think as a preface to how this show came about, Ron, the director, and myself were doing a studio visit with you, and you were showing us some new work, and then you were showing us images that I think you had just shot these for the Delexi book.
Right.
And so you were like, oh, I just did this photography, or just shot these paintings that have been sitting in storage for this number of years. And and you showed us these works. And I think Ron, after that visit, Ron and I both were like, oh my gosh, like what is that body of work? Why hasn't that been shown? And you were saying that this work hadn't been shown since this original show at Delexi in 1968, 69.
Yeah.
So anyways, we thought like we have to like bring this out of storage and excavate it. Yes, which we literally did. And then we're in this tight little back room at your house in San Pedro. But I think the colors were very striking. That just like burned and resonated in my brain when I left that studio visit that day.
I have to add parenthetically that when I was a student starting as an undergraduate, there were at that time in contemporary art, there was sort of a fork in the road. One fork in the road was minimalism and abstract expressionism, which were always very male dominated, and to me, very pretentious.
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, I couldn't imagine that this work was rooted in the human experience, well, which was my problem, wasn't their problem.
So, yeah.
And then there were the incipient, there was pop art.
Right.
And I thought, I'm going to align myself
Yeah.
right with pop art. Because I love the fact that there seemed to be minimal pretension, that you could use all the rubbish from daily life
Yeah.
with gay abandon,
Yeah.
and deal with popular culture, deal with life as we know it. So that was where I really set I set that path.
Yeah.
And it stuck.
Yeah. 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 No, it's wonderful. I love that. And I was reading this in the Delexi there. They quoted Thomas Albright from the critic from the SF Chronicle, and they talk about she praised your work from one of the shows and saying they raised pop to a new level of outrageous garishness. And I was like, I love that because it does. I was like, because it's like it is pop, and I think that's so fascinating about it too. Is like your repeated use of imagery, but then like using the aspect of collage and cutting it out, and like again. Using repeated imagery, which is kind of, like Warhol was doing that with the silk screen, but then to use collage to do that is like, I think another step in another direction, which I think is interesting.
Another piece of the irony is that Warhol became such an inspiration for me in a way that I never would have predicted. But what happened was once he once he started making things like his disaster series, are you all familiar with
Yeah.
that? So he would take one image of, say, something from the New York Post, which was there was a car accident, and there was an injured person, and it was all black and white and kind of fuzzy. And he would make a silk screen of that image and then print it on a surface, on a canvas, or as a repeat pattern.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't necessarily re-ink every time, so it would go from high contrast black and white down to almost nothing, faded out into nothing. And to me, that was incredibly powerful because it was a sort of visual analog to the way our consciousness works. We see something in our lives, and we think, oh my God, and then we see it again, we see it again, we see it again. All of a sudden, it's psychic wallpaper. And to me, it's so. As an artist, I can think or do whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
So I had this idea that this was true for all of us. And it's certainly true for me.
Yeah.
So to me, that was an incredibly powerful insight. I don't know if Warhol ever would have articulated it. I doubt it.
Yeah.
But I've never read. But clearly, it was something that was very much in his mind. I mean, I remember going to New York one time when I had a show, and I was on the subway, and this was right around 1980, and New York was in bad shape. And I remember there was a man who was a paraplegic, and he was an amputee from the hips down, and he was on a pallet with 4 wheels, and he had these 2 rubber things that he could push himself along, and he was going through the train. He first was in the station, then he was going through the train cars asking for alms. And he went back and forth through the cars. And I remember the first time I saw him, I thought, oh my God, how does he live? How does he survive?
Yeah.
Then he came back another time, and I thought, wow, how does he do that? And then maybe by the 4th time, I thought, well, there's the pusher guy again. It was almost like he became a familiar. When he became familiar, he was already halfway to psychic wallpaper. And to me, that was very significant.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, and for you to push past that in your own work, you like how you're utilizing the figures and creating that psychic wallpaper through your work.
Well, yeah, I mean, when the LA riots happened and Rodney King beating happened, one thing this is a way of acting out the same thing. When we moved to San Pedro, the house is quite old, and there was this wallpaper, Baroque wallpaper of, it's called toile.
Okay.
And it's this linear repeat pattern of shepherds and shepherdesses and lambs, and,
oh, wow.
And it's sort of pattern. So to me, it was the ultimate denial wallpaper. Denial archetypal wallpaper.
Yeah.
So I saved it. I saved a chunk of it because I thought this stuff has some power.
Yeah.
And then the television had these repeat images of the Rodney King event. So I photographed the Rodney King, and then I made a painting I made several versions of it. I rendered some of this shepherds and shepherdesses in green line. And then I painted the Rodney King event in burnt sienna.
Oh, wow.
With slightly fuzzy oil paint.
Yeah.
So you could see they were equally weighted. You could see the toile and the Rodney King. But what happens is when people look at it, they see this, but they don't see that. Or they see this and they don't see that. So the friend who has this artwork has a mirror on one side. So here's the artwork and here's the mirror.
Yeah.
So that when people look at the artwork, they see one thing. When they look in the mirror, they see another thing. But it's very hard to hold both those things in our consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's another that comes out of Warhol for actually.
Yeah. And did you make a whole body? Did you do a show about that, or with that imagery?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did.
And where'd you show that at?
The let's see, there was a gallery in LA called Turcotte,
Okay.
and he closed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the work also at the IGM Gallery, Institute of Genetic Medicine,
Okay.
on the USC campus. That was shown there, and then some of it was shown in New York. I can't remember exactly when. I think it was the AIR gallery that I was connected to. Oh no, it was Parsons Dreyfus.
Oh, okay.
Which is
Oh,
where
yeah.
I was in until she
Yeah.
shut it down.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, but yeah, that stuff is, it comes out of Warhol.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Disaster series is one of my favorite series that he did. And just Warhol was a big influence on me growing into college as
Really?
well. Yeah. So his work was
Do you all
amazing.
know his Disaster series at all?
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Yeah, there's a few books out there. There's a book called I was just at a studio visit with an artist, and they just got the book. It's called Dark Star, whatever, and that's a whole book. It was a show I think they did at the Whitney, and that's a whole book on the Disaster series. And there's another book that is called Disaster Paintings that you can buy. It's just of those paintings, but they're fantastic. I think it started out with the plane. It was like a plane crash one that he had done first. I think it was just like a diptych. I think that he had done, or maybe it was like 2 or 3 images of it. But
Actually, he kind of. I had a friend in graduate school who had a part-time job working for a Kodak quality control lab, and his job was to take all the prints and pull out the bad prints, so that then they'd reprint and then give people back their photo prints from their negatives.
Oh yeah.
In the days of negatives.
Yeah, right.
So he saved all the outtakes, the bad prints, and he'd give them to me.
Oh wow.
And what a treasure trove.
Yeah.
So a lot of the forms, a lot of the characters, and the shapes and the content of my work comes from my slide archive.
Really?
And it was also his slide archive at the time.
Yeah.
Now it's my slide archive.
Yeah.
But I'm not slide archive, but photo archive. So he would get at Thanksgiving time. He would get a lot of pictures of people smiling over the Thanksgiving turkey, the whole family. So you might have 20 different photos of people looking over the Thanksgiving turkey.
Yeah.
And I never knew that was a thing. But it was so interesting.
Oh my gosh. Is that okay? And that was one of my questions later, but I think we'll come to it now because I'm interested. There's a repeated imagery throughout all these things. And one of them was that I was noticing the other day was everybody is almost smiling or grinning. There's a lot of teeth too. I think like the application of teeth and the prominence of teeth. I think it's interesting because in all of these 9 paintings, whatever, you see that a lot. It's just like, wow, you're like that guy his teeth are like showing, baring his teeth, and it becomes like almost aggressive, but then also it's also very joyous too. It's like it's in a friendly manner, that it's being displayed.
I like double edges.
Yeah.
I definitely like as my gallerist in LA says, Strasen's work has an edge.
Yeah, it does. Well, I mean, even I think also too, another repeated image I see is rope, and also you have like bars and hooks that kind of intersect the painting plane. And so maybe you could speak to the origin of those. I think that's because also that too. It's it looks like rope. It's not in the back of this one, but this one over here has rope. But it looks like telephone cord too, which on old rotary phones.
That's my favorite way of painting it, right there.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in a way, it's seeking formal devices that have content.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wanted to find things that would kind of go in and out, front and back.
I mean, definitely connects looking at these, there is your engagement with the composition.
Right,
is you can tell it's very important to you the way you've made that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it's about weaving.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you can't use yarn. It won't show up. What's bigger than yarn?
Yeah.
Rope. What's bigger than normal rope? Ship rope.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So that's how I remembered choosing it for that reason. And then spatial devices. So there's one with tiny airplanes.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, great, because then you can, whatever space you make, you can turn it to deep space by simply shrinking the airplanes. And I thought, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So
And the pyramids too. Pyramids are throughout these, as well as balloons.
balloons, I love balloons.
Yeah?
Always have loved balloons. In fact, just right now, just yesterday, I'm using some of these devices again because I was so happy to see them. So I'm using the gangplank.
Yeah.
I'm using balloons, and I'm using landscape, but it's going to be based on a camouflage pattern.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm turning it into landscape. And then balloons are going to be coming up from the earth.
Okay.
Some are going to be free.
Yeah.
Others are coming up through the earth. So I thought, I got to do this again.
Wow.
So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah. I mean, and I think like the balloons, and I think the rope being double edged with, it's like, yeah, it has an aggressiveness too, but then also it has, yeah, you're saying for ships, it has, those double meanings. And then there was, and the swimsuits. It's like, because I think also, like, I see these, and the colors also remind me of like capturing the California summer. They remind me of that. Especially like with like, and then everybody wearing swimsuits or in some type of garb of that nature.
I was definitely smitten with
Yeah?
California. I remember the first time we ever went to Yosemite.
Yeah.
At the time there were these sort of pre-established places called Kodak lookouts,
Oh yeah.
photo op places. And in Yosemite Valley there was one where you kind of pull your car out and you get out, and then straight down the valley you would see Half Dome, and you would see the iconic bits of
Coming out of the tunnel, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And I remember getting out and standing there with camera ready to take a photo, and these squirrels that looked like basketballs
Yeah.
came out. They were, the equivalent of a 600-pound person. They were so plump.
Yeah.
Because everybody came to feed the squirrels at that lookout. And that also stuck with me. So, things are not, I very rarely make sweet art.
Yeah.
I have on occasion. But it's not my intention.
No. Well, it's like, I mean, it brings you a lot of, I see these, and when I saw these for the first time, I was like, wow, they were brought me a lot of excitement, but then you look at them, yeah, it's even this one here, I keep on referring to the large orange sky, I think it's called. Yeah. And then, and that one too, the border of it has these large spikes going all the way around it that you've painted in there, which is interesting because
I might
it's
have
very.
to do that again.
Yeah, I know, you should. Because you're like, oh, like that's fun.
As for the pyramids, I have no idea.
I love it.
All I know is that the pyramids reiterate those note shapes, the triangular note shapes. And
I think too, when I saw these, I just saw the images on a flat screen at first, but I was taken by them immediately. And then it wasn't until I think I saw them, I came and visited your studio, and you pulled one out for me. I was looking at the picture, and I was like, why is it curved in?
This one.
Yeah. I was like, why is this curved in? And then and I realized the canvas was concave. That's the way, like, it physically goes, comes out and goes in, and then the pieces were coming out. Like, what led you to do that? It's such an interesting approach to painting.
When I was making these big drawings made out of paper, and then I'd slide the drawings around to establish the frontal composition.
Yeah.
Then it became clear to me that could be a cutout and suspend, because then you'd get an actual shadow on the surface, and then I could render shadows too. So it's trompe-l'oeil.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Plus I always love cutouts.
Oh,
and love pop-up books.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Do you collect them? Do you collect pop-up books? Is that something you search for?
No, but I collect. So I've done a lot of lenticular, work,
Yes.
which is an extension of these affinities.
Right.
And I do have an extensive collection of lenticular postcards, which got me going on the lenticular
Interesting.
prospect in 2003.
Yeah. Where do you collect these lenticular postcards
Well,
from?
I remember I had a friend who took a trip around the world
Uh-huh.
who agreed to send me a lenticular postcard from every place.
That's ambitious.
Yes,
What a
very
nice
ambitious.
friend.
And then I collected a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And before I knew how to do it, I would take tweezers and kind of take them apart to see how they were made. And of course, I learned nothing.
Yeah.
But the affection for these things is long standing. For sure.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah. That's amazing. And then you know that when you're at Berkeley, Hassel Smith was your
yes.
and so he was a big he helped push your work into shows.
He was my favorite.
Was he?
My favorite teacher. Yeah, he was a wonderful man, and a terrific painter. And he also loved art history, which I did too.
Wow.
So he knew so much, and his painterly orientation, which you would never imagine, came from art history. And I remember him talking about Canaletto. Canaletto was a 17th century Venetian painter, and he would paint big panoramic scenes of the Grand Canal in Venice with maybe 200 tiny people in each painting. And I remember Hassel Smith saying, every single one of those tiny people is doing something different. And that, he would have a way of making me want to research. Just curiosity, light bulb.
Yeah.
For art history, which I love.
Wow.
And I love to cannibalize art history whenever possible.
Sure.
But bring it up to date, which takes me back to Carnegie. And
yeah.
So, those things show up over and over and over again.
Yeah. Then did he introduce you? Did you know about Delexi Gallery before being introduced into that show?
No, I think I was a complete ignoramus.
Okay.
I didn't.
Yeah. Like in going through this book, it's amazing, like the breadth of Delexi and everybody.
I came in at the tail end.
Right. Yeah.
And so when I saw that book, I didn't know the history of Jim Newman and his activities.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. I was like, wow, just in the basically like this triangle of different artist movements of that time between Ferris and Delexi, and then bringing in Green Gallery, which did like Donald Judge shows, whatever. And
Green Gallery was in New York.
In New York, yeah. So they tie that in there too, kind of at the same
I
time.
didn't know that until I saw this book.
Yeah,
So,
I was like, but yeah, Laura Whitcomb did an amazing job.
Yeah.
What an amazing project to do all
Huge.
that. Yeah, huge. So to dissect all that. So yeah, very cool. Do we have any questions? Okay.
How does it feel to look back at this body of work now that some time has passed?
Wow, it was a very strange experience because I hadn't seen them in so long, and every time we moved, we just kind of take them and find a way to store them. And the fact that they were in such good shape.
Amazing shape.
And so in a way, it felt like learning to ride a bicycle again.
Huh.
I'd look at them and say, who did that? Oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, yeah, why did I do that? Oh, I remember why I did that, why I did that. And then all of a sudden, I'm in them. And I could remember everything.
Yeah.
And so much so that now I want to make 2023 lurching forward variants using somewhat the same visual vocabulary and color vocabulary. So...
Because there's these 9, and then there's 5 more?
The end of it.
And then like that, and I think, and then also this body of work, I think is a wonderful springboard to kind of go into your future work too, with like lenticulars, because it all kind of starts from here.
And there are certain things that show up, certain characters that become cutouts.
Yeah.
That then get used over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting you spoke about camouflage paintings earlier, because I mean, these do like the repeat. You do a wonderful job of repeating characters, but you almost have like a sense of deja vu looking at them, where you're like, I've seen that character, but we can't put a finger exactly where you saw it. But the images, like, they kind of they disappear and then appear, and they have that to push back, push and pull.
I've always loved that. And
Yeah.
there was a show that I saw in London some years ago at the Military Museum. I think it was called Interruption or Interference.
Okay.
Interruption. It was about the art of camouflage
Oh, interesting.
over time. Oh man, was that interesting?
Yeah.
And it looked at it looked at the way the military would use various visually interrupting devices to keep the enemy from seeing a bunch of soldiers or tanks and things like that. And the principle is, if you take a shape and you bisect it somehow, you're already slowing down the read. And if you have other things in front of it, so that was. What else can I say about that? Look it up.
Yeah. It's funny you say it, because Ellsworth Kelly, he painted camouflage for the trucks in the military.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so his interaction with color in the way
he would do things like he'd have a shape like this with a big rectangular thing, and then the other half of the shape only smaller.
Yeah.
So that's one essential piece of the principle of camouflage and interruption, meaning if you change a shape, the size of it, or if you have something going through it, all of a sudden it's kind of not really there.
Right. Yeah.
So interesting.
It is. It's very interesting. And it looks so simple. You're like, oh yeah, camouflage do that, but the way, you have to use it to make an illusion is very intricate. So, after Delexi, did you notice an interest in your work grow after that point?
Well, after Delexi, we moved.
Oh, okay.
We moved to different places.
Okay.
And we were making our way south in California. So I actually lost touch. I never found out why Jim Newman closed the gallery and what he did.
Yeah.
So I found out from that book.
Yeah.
So, if there was interest, I knew nothing about it.
Right. Because I bring that up because in 1977, then you participated in the Whitney Biennial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And by that time, I was making these freestanding floor-based dioramas with cutouts, and also with water and beach-based imagery.
Oh, okay.
Aquatic imagery. Not like, I was inspired by aquariums. And there were cutouts that, seaweed, painted masonite cutouts of seaweed and fish and things stacked on the floor.
Oh, wow.
And you could stretch the space or you could compress the space.
So at the Whitney Biennial, did you create an installation? Because that's also a practice that developed out of your work, was installation.
Well, installations were right after that. The Whitney just shipped the components.
Recently? Oh no!
At the time of
okay. I thought you meant sorry. I thought you meant now. I was like, that's a long time to hold on to work. How dare they? I got you.
Yeah, they were complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So, any questions from the audience? Oh, go ahead in the back.
Well, I remember the figure. The title of this artwork is Tuxedo Man, and I remember I found him in an advert in a magazine, and I thought, well, I can use that shape in a concave surface. So I remember he came from an advert, and as far as the rest of the composition, I have no recollection whatsoever. But I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to make it glamorous. Okay, I need some hills. All right, I need water, I need reflections, I need light reflecting in the water. So I just kind of glamorize it according to whatever seemed glamorous at the time.
Yeah.
Now I do sequins, I think. Well, that's another device. I love shapes that have sharp outside edges. That's something that's built in. Always shapes with heart. There can be all kinds of stuff on the inside, but the shapes, I like to have sharp edges. Always. Can I tell a funny story?
Of course.
It's a little bit obscene,
That's fine.
but when my first two vehicles had writing on the side with caution tape, the writing in black 3-inch letters said, Speed Queen, Art Disposal System. And somebody from the neighborhood who had a really good graphic skill came out with a Sharpie multiple times and put an F in front of the word art. on my vehicle.
That's nice.
And I have to say, each time I would discover it, I'd be enraged, but I'd also find it so funny. So I'd come out with alcohol, wash it off. So the last iteration, my car doesn't have any writing, but it has the caution tape.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to besmirch.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for this edition of Beyond the Frame and on the couch. So thank you, Barbara, for being here with me today.
You're most welcome.
It was wonderful to chat with you and talk about this work extensively and just your path, your career and such. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for being here and participating. Barbara Strasen All Together Now is on view here at LBMA at our Ocean campus until August 20th. Our hours are Thursday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so feel free to come by and see it. And Barbara will also be doing a talk with Ron Nelson and Sue Ann Robinson on June 25th. So we'll come here in the same at 1 p.m. here on the couch. So that should be a really great talk because you have a wonderful history with Sue Ann, and you know Ron for a very long time. So when did you and Sue Ann meet? That's what Ron and I were trying to figure out.
We were in a show together. Well, wait a minute. We were in a show together at Santa Ana College.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was right around then.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So, because Barbara also did a show here at the Museum of Lenticulars back in 2018 or 16? Thereabouts, yeah. We have to look at the exact date. So
on the 25th, I'll also show some essential slides of what grew out of this work.
Yes, yeah.
So you'll have a visual context.
Yeah, which would be wonderful. So thank you again, Barbara, and thank you all. Appreciate you all. Bye.